mice come, and we have a stray dog at the elevator on the farm now. Someone dumped him, and so Peyton and I have been taking care of him.
Ready?
Been a
All
lot
right.
going on.
We'll call this Tuesday, March 7th, Area Plan Commission meeting to order. First item is roll call of members.
Jordan Brewer,
Here.
Grant Muller,
Here.
Clark Beard is absent, Walt Minnick,
Yes.
Andy Bailey.
Here.
Mike Minnick is absent, Dan Sheets,
Here.
staff members Liz Stitzel and Pat Feller present, Attorney Jay Moore is absent.
Okay, next item is we have the minutes from our previous meeting. Is there any changes, or do we have a motion to accept?
I'd make a motion to accept the minutes.
Second.
Okay. Roll call, please.
Jordan Brewer,
Yes.
Grant Muller,
Yes.
Walt Minnick,
Yes.
Andy Bailey,
Yes.
Dan Sheets.
Yes.
We have one item under old business. It's application CC 20-22-01225, which is the petition of William Knapp Trust. So,
Need a petition to take that off the table for a motion.
a motion to take it off the table?
Yeah, do we need that?
I don't think we do.
Don't think
I
so.
don't think we
No.
usually
Okay.
do,
Should be able to.
Perfect.
because it's technically
because we-
continued,
it's-
it's
yeah, it's
technically
continued
not
on
the
the- yeah,
table.
yeah, it's on the-
Gotcha.
In this board's format.
Yep. So I'll turn it over to you, Liz.
Yeah, so if you all recall, the situation with this particular plat was that, it did not have easements to actually get to perimeter drain where it needed to go. They weren't acquired at the point in time when we, last met. So since then, easements have been obtained. There's actually 3 of them that were obtained, and they've been recorded. And, Jay has looked over them, and, I believe we're good to go. Was this the one that was one question on that? Yeah, so Jay's not able to be here, but I think he had talked to Ron about this, and we didn't get the update on the other end. But Jay did have a concern on the, I think on the actual deed, correct? And the language for how it referred to the easements. And that was prepared by, I think, another attorney. Ron, had Jay gotten a hold of you on that? I think he was gonna call you. Okay, so hopefully Ron can update you to that. But my understanding is, last we knew, there was a bit of an issue regarding that deed, but we do at least have easements now, so we're moving in the right direction, and maybe Ron will have the rest of the information we need.
Ron Ware with Moses Surveying representing the petition. As Liz said, we did go ahead and get the easements from the different landowners. They had no problem with putting that in there along the right-of-way. And then Jay found out that there was an item missing on, or the deed, and so I have prepared a surveyor's affidavit that will correct that one statement about the frontage dimension that's on the deed, and it references that to it. And then it also references the 2 easements that are on their property too, so it'll reflect any kind of recordings after this that those are on the record for it.
Pat did just verify, she had that conversation with Jay, that surveyor's affidavit is what Jay told her was needed.
Okay.
So we should have everything resolved then that remained on that one.
Okay. Any questions?
Do I need a copy of that, Ron? I don't think we have a copy of the surveyor's affidavit with our file, I believe I do.
You may have a copy.
I'll open it up if there's any other people in the audience that would like to speak on this petition. Okay, seeing none. Board discussion? Nope. Comments, thoughts? Motion?
I would move that we grant the petition.
Second.
Okay. Roll call, please.
Jordan Brewer,
Yes.
Grant Muller,
Yes.
Walt Minnick,
Yes.
Andy Bailey,
Yes.
Dan Sheets.
Yes.
Right, so primary approval is granted, and then Ron was to get all that pulled together and organized with your secretary, so.
Okay, we'll move on to our public hearings. The first one on the docket is application CC 2023-00088. It's the petition of William D. Seibert. Take us through that, please.
Right, so, as you know, this is a request for primary approval of a one-lot minor subdivision for William Seibert Square. This property and everything surrounding it are zoned agriculturally. The petition site consists of a roughly 10-acre lot. It's a first split from a 66-acre parent tract. It's on the east side of North 800 East in Section 18 of Forest Township. According to the county GIS, the site shows a large area of wetlands, but there was a study done by the Army Corps of Engineers, and they determined that the lot soils are not consistent with the criteria for being actual wetlands, therefore there's not a restriction on the lot relative to that. There is a picture on the second page that does show the area that was, the map on Beacon is actually the 1977 federal maps for where they thought wetlands might be based on looking at aerial photography in Washington DC. But again, the Army Engineers determined there are no actual wetlands on this lot. It's a picture of the property from the northwest corner as well. So the petitioner obtained Board of Zoning Appeals special exception approval for a home site here on September 27th of 2022. This is not an illegal watershed, but it has been approved by the Drainage Board. There's 3 soil types that I won't bore you with, but they're there if you're interested in them. And they're a mix of soil types that drain reasonably and then some soil types that don't, like much of Clinton County. In terms of request analysis, the petitioner is requesting primary plat approval. The standard rural development protection language for agriculture is included in the covenants. The surveyor's office said the Drainage Board has approved the plat. The health department has approved the property as suitable for a septic system. And this is a little bit different than what we see normally. This lot right now is approved for a Presby system, which is a type of mound system. That's a septic that has to be installed above the ground in order to get elevations. That is shown on the plat, and in discussion with the health department needs a condition included, which actually needs to be a covenant in this case because it's a subdivision plat, that notes that this lot can only have above ground and elevated system of some sort on it. Limiting to a Presby system doesn't make sense because that's just one type of mound system, but there's not enough elevation on this site to put a conventional in-ground system anywhere on the lot and actually drain it off. So it does need to be clear to future owners that if something happens, that's the only kind of system that can go there. And then the enforcement clause in the covenants is also included and can be initiated by any adjacent landowner within a quarter mile. In terms of principles and standards of design, Jay Moore's reviewed the restrictive covenants and he didn't have any revisions that he had concern with. They highlighted before the meeting, and then the proposed subdivision name is also not a duplicate. We checked with the county recorder. There is no other subdivision named Seibert Square in the county. So, staff would have the recommendation to grant primary approval because it appears to meet the standards of the subdivision ordinance with the requirement that the covenants need to be revised before the secondary is signed. And I'm gonna change what's on the staff report a little bit because we had this conversation. It should be limited to an above ground and elevated system, what some people would call a mound system. That needs to be in the covenants, not necessarily a Presby system because we came to understand from the health department that that's a brand,
Yeah.
Versus a type of system. And that system needs to be as shown on the plat, proposed by the engineer and approved by the health department. And then the other thing that we were aware of in conversation that at least we wanted to mention, it appears on the documentation that it meets, but the board may want to verify, is, so there were some concerns on this plat at the BZA stage of the game that there would not be a way to get the perimeter drain of the septic out to something. And the surveyor, they told me that they had dug up and located a tile on the property, which they have shown on the plat, but the board may want to verify that that was actually done and that we're not guessing as to a tile location, because given what we know about this area, if this hasn't been verified and there isn't actually a tile in this location on the lot, then it would not meet the subdivision standards, and we might want to continue it and give them a chance to actually dig that up and let the health department verify its existence if it hasn't been visually verified to be present. But other than that comment, I'll leave that to the board's discretion, to your confidence, but we always want to make sure that there actually is a tile on site. If it's not on the site, or it doesn't exist, or it's theorized to exist but hasn't been verified, that can generate a problem if the appropriate easement hasn't been created. So otherwise, you know, the plat appears from review to meet all the standards, and as it stands.
Okay, thank you, Liz. Would the petitioner or rep like to comment or speak to us, please?
Yeah, Seth Johnson with 40th Parallel Surveying, representing. As far as the tile in the northeast corner, I field verified it, located it. It's currently a HDP breather. At the time that I located, I believe it was dug up, and I shot the elevation myself. And it cuts across the corner of that property, as I believe is shown on there. So that's about as sure as I can be that it's
What
there.
is the diameter of it? I don't have the
I believe it was 6 inch.
6 inch.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And then the only other thing is that on the condition that we add a note that the mound system be required on the plat, I will do that. It'd be fine with me, but I would push back a little bit and say septic permit process will take care of the type and details and specs of the system on the site. It's a 10-acre site. It is rather flat, but you know, soils may be different somewhere else. To restrict them that much here on the plat, when that will come later with the septic permit, seems, I will do it, like I said, but I would push back a little bit on that. Down the line, 50 years from now, when this system fails or a new owner comes in and there's new septic, you know, are we restricting them on this plat that they can only do a mound system forever and ever and ever? It is a 10-acre site. There may be a deeper tile that we don't know about. So that would be my only other comment on that. But having said that, the change of the covenants can be done, no problem.
I would note that as staff, we have no issue with removing that recommendation as long as they give soil tests to the health department and verify there is at least one site on this lot where a conventional system can go in and have elevations. So obviously that's gonna take them some time to do, but we don't have any issue with the argument, but the problem is if there's not the ability to get septics on the site, then, you know, that then produces a question about whether or not it actually is a buildable location. So it just so happens that the soil tests that they presented only permit that kind of system, and it was an elevation fall issue, is my understanding, which the entire site is flat, but as staff, we would have no concern or hesitancy as long as somebody, whether or not they're putting in the system that way, as long as somebody can show that somewhere on this site they can get a regular system in, then we would view that as flexible. But we also think that if somebody purchases something, they don't necessarily expect to be limited to the most expensive type of system. So it kind of gives them a heads up that there aren't other options if the system does fail.
Yep.
Sure, and that's fine. Like I said, the intent of the developer is to install Presby. That's why it's noted on there specifically. That's what was the septic installer communicated to us. So not a problem. Just wanted to make sure we didn't limit future owners of this lot to do what they needed to do. You know, we're showing the Presby system on this with the soil borings as currently showing that a system can be installed physically. And then to limit them more, just wanted to make sure that it was, that I spoke up on that. So, but other than
That was a health department preference,
Yeah,
not
yeah.
ours. Rodney said they're absolutely on this site. It's not just a choice, but in the location that and there is not enough fall. So
Right.
there's no way they can take it underground. It's not just the installer's preference. That's what Rodney told us. But at the end of the day, if you want to let the health department handle it, we're good with that.
Okay. Anything else, Seth?
that's it.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else here for this petition that would like to speak?
Yeah, Ned Smith, Smith Farms. Only got a couple copies, sorry
Okay.
guys.
That's what I was
Ned Smith from Smith Farms LLC. We're the landowners around that. There is a tile there. Those guys went out in my field and snaked through it to find it. It's where we'd repaired to the east of that site. I believe it is a 6 inch. And then on to the north of that, is everybody following me there on where we're at? It cuts through the very corner of that property on a high spot, drops through and heads up to housing property on north of there, which we've repaired north of their site many, many times, but we were able to get a crop out this past year after it finally quit raining. But we fight it, I mean, continually. There's two spots broke down again right now before we go into spring we'll work on. One of them is up at the house of the neighboring house there. It's in his backyard, and it's kind of a swale there that runs through. And we can't, there's a couple of them there we can't stop. Of course, we're pushing water from nearly over a quarter of a mile from the south on south of what that map doesn't even show, or we're trying to. And as you can see down there by the railroad tracks, there is an opening, an interurban opening, and it goes to nowhere. That tile sets on top of the ground down there, which we've replaced parcels of it that was just broke down. And all the yellow and orange is the complete flooding of that whole area. So that's all the water from south that is quite a bit higher on elevation. I really get tired of replacing my broken down tile, let alone adding more water to it from another system and showers and washing and whatever, all the extra water that I was told there isn't any more water. Well, there is if you're washing clothes and running baths, and maybe it's a little bit worse overtax now on this that I'd sure like to have some help on working on it. And really, I discussed it with Dan before, we need to go clear to the creek, and there's so many trees on north there where I show the Kilmores at, and there, it's just not some fuzz. I'd hate, land's expensive, but working on that would be, I don't know, I don't think it's probably feasible, but whatever. So that's for you guys to determine. So that's my problem with the whole thing is what little tiles there in that corner of that lot. Yeah, there is one, but it's so overloaded that I'd like for you to not consider this, because I can't take any more. I've got more than I can handle now, and more yet. Some of those on the south, we may have to go some other direction, but we're still gonna have to use part of that tile to drain the neighboring house's septic and that pond there north of their field. The others we might be able to do something with eventually. I think we had a guy to the south of us that was gonna do one, but he retired there a couple years ago. He'd done a system across the road, so we're still kinda looking to get that thing, something done with it, a system, so. Thank you. Any questions?
You guys have anything?
I don't have anything. No.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
All right. Board discussion or questions for the petitioner after?
Is the petitioner here? I don't know if this can be done, but you do understand what this gentleman's saying about the tile currently being maxed out and he's experiencing blowouts downstream. Is that something you'd be willing to put into a covenant, saying you would be willing to help him with that tile to keep it up and running?
You know, what I've seen out there, the tile is normally dry. I think what he's talking about on a rain event, that it gets, and, I mean, I'll do whatever I can to help. I don't out that much water, the ones I've seen,
Now, they're just draining the water around it, the groundwater.
yeah,
And you would not be putting roof drains into this,
no,
and you won't be collecting any surface water.
no.
But I do understand what Mr. Smith is saying.
I do, yeah.
Pretty long length of tile, and technically it is a mutual drain, so everybody should join in the repair costs of keeping that thing up and running. But I don't think we can do anything about that.
You can certainly require the covenants
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
include prohibitions against additional water other than just the
Could do
perimeter
that.
drain to go in. As to whether or not you can do anything about, maintenance, unfortunately, that's a J question, so if you wanted to answer that conclusively, unfortunately, you probably have to wait till he's back with us. I'm not comfortable saying one way or the other on that for sure. I know sometimes with some things you can force the issue, and with other things you can't, and I'm not sure where the law would fall on this without Jay's advice and opinion. Certainly, if they're willing to voluntarily allow a mutual maintenance covenant to be created as part of the secondary, they could commit to that, you know, with the board, but as far as what you can force, I can't answer that without Jay's input.
I'm also assuming you'll have a sump pump. You don't think that's required by code. Where will that be discharging?
You know, it's just, we haven't got that far, but I'm guessing it would just go outside. We can't.
Well, not in the septic system, for the crawl space, I'm sorry.
Oh, it would just go outside.
How far is the tile from that property to the outlet roughly? How many feet?
Oh, 8 mile. Well, there's no real outlet.
I mean, it's outletting somewhere. There may not be
No,
a
it sits
defined
on top of the ground.
outlet,
It really doesn't outlet. Somebody
oh,
else asked
the
me
water
that.
is leaving the tile. That is technically an
Well, it
outlet.
doesn't- You can't find it right now because it's probably that far under. As you can see, the yellow there,
Yeah.
all that's underwater. He said it didn't flood. Well, it was very dry from May on, and that topo map was October? It shows it's pretty, well, that yellow and orange is underwater. All those
September.
where we had nothing. Any orange or yellows.
Okay. Seth, you know.
I would just
roughly.
add one thing, that since it's a mound system, the perimeter drain will be 36 inches below the trench, the lowest trench, which means it'll be 36 inches below the existing ground only. So this tile, the perimeter drain tile, will only be 36 inches below the existing ground. So it won't be 6 to 8 feet deep pumping into this tile, your groundwater. And we can add a covenants if we needed to specify the perimeter drain only is for septic purposes, like I
You
said.
happen to recall what the seasonal high water table is on that site?
I do not.
I think we've got it somewhere.
Do you know, Seth, how far that tile is from the property line to the,
To the septic, or to the,
yeah, where you would want to hook on this potential house site to where, how far does it
oh, to the
go to?
outlet.
Yeah, go to the discharge.
It's because it goes up north to the railroad,
Yeah.
I believe. Yeah.
You guys have any thoughts down here?
You said it's a 6 inch?
I don't recall, I repaired at the property line, I left a riser because it's right at the top of the ground, like, how deep was it? You guys know since I was.
It's 2 to 3 feet deep there at the property line, maybe 4 feet deep, but
No,
the
it's-
right,
It's not near that, it's like that, where I put the riser in the fence row when we fixed what was completely broke down on out in the field, I didn't touch any of theirs, I left it alone. And then on the north side there, I repaired lots of places up in that curve going to that house.
Yeah, just curves.
Yeah.
Curves on clay, they cause problems.
It's an old system. I think it might have been a 5 flat bottom originally. But it was even less than that where I went on out. It's so old that when we got to the hole, it wasn't in the middle of the hole. The water was too much deeper. I guess they got tired of digging and to keep the elevation, they went around it. It was probably so wet that they made a circle around the bottom trying to drain it.
Yeah.
I mean, we're talking, I've been on like 5 generations out on this. Somebody did that. I don't know. I don't have a record. of
Yeah.
that.
So just hypothetically, would you consider allowing them an easement to run a tile from their property to the discharge area on the railroad? To put a new one in, to not hook into that one?
Oh, I guess that.
Okay.
So I would say we need to do something.
I'm actually looking through the subdivision ordinance right now, because you have to tie back to standards to see what it says about drainage, so I may have something before. Wait here in a moment. The septic system part just says it has to comply with the minimum standards of the health department, so that's not really exactly our debate, unless we feel, if the board feels the tile's not functioning at all, and you want that verified, then I guess that's a related question, since the health department.
I mean, I think that's the direction it's going, that the tile is
So,
overworked and outdated.
Yeah. I'm showing 3 soil reports here. 2 of them are 4 inches to water table and 1 is 5. So water table's very high.
What'd you say again? 4 inches?
Seasonal high water table at the septic site is 4 inches. That's what's got to be purged.
That's wet,
Mm-hmm.
very wet. And that's why the requirement for the mound system or elevated system.
Yep. Are you still looking?
I am, it shouldn't take me much longer, I'm a fairly quick reader, I just,
I mean, I think a continuation on this case at minimum, unless we have some clear, because I mean, I hate for the petitioner to go through the motions and put a house in and something happen and we can't get it done because the drainage is terrible.
I would say as well, just to add, when my conversation with Rodney Wan at the health department, his first suggestion, before I explained to him the mound system and the tile elevation, was to dig a hole, a sump on site, and daylight the perimeter drain on the property. Is that something that we could show as a possibility? That was his suggestion. Basically digging a sump on the site and daylighting the tile on our property, daylighting the perimeter drain, sorry, on our property, as an option for the homeowner to develop the 10-acre site. I believe that's something they'd be willing to do. If they had to, if it came down to it, if this tile is not deemed to be workable.
Any
So-
idea where that would go on the site if you have elevation to do it?
Well, that was what I asked Rodney, and he said that we could excavate a hole.
So you build a
And he would-
pond and
and he would
essentially
be-
you'd artificially create a pond and then discharge into your
Basically,
pond, your
yeah,
own pond.
create a detention area that would
Yeah.
hold water periodically, maybe never, but depending on how they constructed it. But that was a health department suggestion that would allow a septic system, a mound system, to work on this property as well, with the tile across our property and seemingly working. It was dry when I looked into it. We went ahead and went to the tile as it's, a little bit cleaner. So,
Would that have to come back to drainage board, Dan?
That I don't know. I think we passed it. It's probably done with drainage board.
I found the little drainage section, but it pretty much all says it needs to, there's a lot of stuff about increase of water flow and things, but it's specifically talking about surface water, not septic discharge. And it ties into drainage board approval, so if it's already been reviewed, that's not,
But it'd be materially changing, right?
Well, perhaps, but I wonder if this works. We know the seasonal high water table on the good spot is 4 inches. The other soils may be even less than that. So if
No.
you dig a hole in the ground, it's just gonna fill up with water and the tile's not gonna work.
there are some clauses here, this is in the ordinance under, areas of poor drainage, which is most of the county, to some degree. But there are some clauses that just states, areas that are not within the jurisdiction of the Clinton County Floodplain Management Ordinance, which this isn't, it's not a floodplain, but which contain soils that are subject to flooding may be approved for subdivision by the Plan Commission, provided the subdivider fills the affected areas to an elevation sufficient to place building sites and streets 2 foot above ponding levels, which obviously we don't have streets here. And then I have, in areas characterized by soils having a high seasonable water table as determined by soil and water, which we obviously can't talk to tonight in the meeting, then you limit to slab type construction, which would then get you around, sumps. You're not gonna have a crawl space. And then, low-lying land along water sources, this isn't. I've got this section on above ground drainage and, affecting county tiles, but it all ties back into drainage board approvals, which were already passed. And then we've got this section on, sewage disposal
I know.
and, perimeter drains, which ties into the health department. So, I think the question there would be whether or not the health department would adjust that to not going into the tile, and then you'd have to decide whether or not there's a water issue created. You certainly have jurisdiction over making sure a subdivision isn't creating harm, but at the same time, you also have to be able, not necessarily purely about your opinion about how you feel about a house or don't feel about a house, it's about what's happening with the actual water and how that's working, and maybe there's just, like you said, not enough information available tonight to figure out if the health department would offer other options, if the surrounding landowner might be willing to grant an easement to have them separate out the water, which might be better for him than having it just pushed into the overall surface water on the site. You know, I don't know, but he can't have that discussion with his family here tonight, you know, to see if that would be a possibility. You know, the applicant can't really have a discussion among themselves about how they feel about cost and alternative actions, and we can't talk to soil and water about the seasonal water tables according to that clause of the ordinance from the meeting here tonight, so.
Yeah, I think the issue is, from what I'm hearing, is essentially not building a house in an area that's gonna create issues down the road for the house, right? So that the water can get away. So we
The
have to-
house and create problems for the drainage situation for
that's
the
currently in
neighbors.
place.
Yeah.
So we gotta come up with a solution, and whether that's an easement and a new tile run, which would essentially solve the problem, or the creating of the pond or detention area on site are the two options that I think are available at the moment that we would need more clarity on to make a decision.
Well, and Jay could also review your stormwater drainage section of the ordinance to see, you know, what sections that might or might not apply beyond what drainage board, because a lot of it seems at a quick read to veto back to if the drainage board feels that the water issues are addressed, then great. It seems like this is an odd issue because, yes, we're talking about a septic perimeter drain, but this is also tied into surface water issues on this site and where that drainage is going and whether or not we're adding to it. So Jay might be able to offer his opinion on, you know, the maintenance of the tile, of some kind of mutual maintenance agreement could be required, and on how the stormwater drainage clauses do and don't apply. And Dan could also review from the drainage board perspective, thing that might be relevant there, but it's all hard to do tonight in a.
To me, that mutual agreement would be best. Everybody could pay their share.
If the
Keep the
tile
tile.
fails, then everybody's paying in.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't have a problem with that, and I don't have a problem, I don't know how much there's easement on 800, running a tile straight down 800 to Gilmore. I'd have to get a quote for it, but that's what I need to do.
So,
Well, you would still have to get the easement with the private landowners there.
The one next door.
Yeah,
Is there room between the road?
you can't go.
You're not,
No,
yeah,
no,
you
I
can't
don't
go
know.
in the county, you're not gonna be able to go in the county right away, so you'll have to be outside the county right away.
But the last plat that we heard did that, they obtained easements from the landowners between them and a creek on
Well,
the
I don't
private
think- I don't
property
think
right
there's,
next to it.
I'll be cooperative if he's, room to do that. Like, he doesn't, he wants the land, he doesn't want me to. So, as far as, I don't know why he didn't buy it when the first came together. Passed on it. So,
I guess your question was whether or not you could go in the road right of way.
yeah.
You
between-
can't,
Not in the
so-
road, and the easement between the road.
That's part of the road right of way, so that's
Yeah.
all county
Yeah.
land, and the rules say you can't discharge drainage into the site that goes into the road area.
Right, so I believe the two options would be to go get an easement across the farmland to the east to the creek if the elevations allow, get an easement to the north to the railroad, which is the existing spot of the outlet tile, which would just, I'm running the tile to that spot would do no good for the, you're still outletting the water in the same spot that the tile is outletting the water. Or we could add a covenants that we have mutual repair agreement and we're able to tie into the tile as it is on our property, as opposed to running a quarter mile to an outlet that's already overdone. But we just add the mutual repair agreement to the covenant so that if it does need to be fixed, then everybody pays their share on it and then move from there. But, and like you said, get an easement to the creek, get an easement to the railroad, not sure we have cooperative parties, so.
You have a little more landowners to the north, it's like you.
Well, right,
There's two more, actually.
there's a lot to go to the north.
I wish there was something.
And there's a lot of, the railroad, crossing the railroad with a tile, getting to the railroad ditch with a tile, there's a lot of, could be a lot of impediments in the way to get there.
I've tried to get the landowners north of me, let me go across him and the next one to get on up, and he doesn't want me there, and I didn't even try guessing what it was gonna cost to clear that.
Regardless, there's a few options available. Now, whether they'll be able to materialize are questionable, but
Sure.
I think they're out there. We have to get some clarity in that direction from what I'm hearing from the board. So, I guess, and I would just like to be clear on what, moving forward, what would I need to do / get to show that there's an option other than the tile that's across our property. Like I can, we can try and get easements from the owners to the north, make sure it's viable by gravity. Who knows if that's going to materialize? Do we need the surveyor to go view that the tile's running? Do we need, I feel like, you know what I mean? The next step feels very unclear to me.
I think that's partly because you have multiple choices in solving the problem. So certainly if you can get easements and get there, you're showing that you have a way to get water off. If you're willing to look at voluntarily agreeing to share in the cost of maintaining the existing tile so that any added burden that comes from that house isn't an added financial burden on the neighboring landowner, then I think you could work with our attorney to get appropriate language prepared.
Okay,
You know,
so
and how that to
I
put
guess
that-
that's-
That's the way that it goes, so that if there's an issue with the tiles and the neighboring landowner knows there's financial responsibility to match.
So if we're going to go the route of the mutual
So, I mean, I
agreed,
think it's gonna depend on which way you wanna
Right.
go, cause.
okay,
you know,
if we're going to go with the mutual agreed repair cost, we would need to get Jay involved with writing that up to get the.
Yes, it would, because that
Would
that
be the
agreement is gonna
covenants.
have to be to his satisfaction, legally tying them into having a responsibility that the neighboring
Right.
landowner can then enforce. Because it's not just about these landowners, what if it sells, what if the future landowners don't wanna pay? The covenant needs to be locked tight enough, that the neighboring landowner, if he has a problem, can force the issue and stand on that.
And you have the option that you mentioned in terms of creating the retention on site.
Yep.
I mean, I think that's possibly viable
If
as
the health
well.
department agrees to
Yeah.
that and the drainage board agrees
If
that
the health
that's
department right off.
gonna work. So I think that's why it feels unclear, because you could potentially go multiple directions, but I think what we're saying is there needs to be a drainage solution other than just adding, without any effort to compensate for effect.
I'll ask Mr. Smith, if I buy you 1,000 feet of 6-inch tile, will that solve the problem?
I don't know, they'd have to do a diagnostic, but I think it'd help either one of us. All that, the more we fix up top and it made it better, the more floods at the bottom of my farm. We need to go clear to the creek.
And that's what I can't.
We all need to go clear to the creek. I'm just,
So-
it keeps coming back on me, and it's, the
I
next
can't
landowner's
do
full
anything
too.
with that.
I mean, it's standing full right now, like that deep down there. No place for it to go.
Yeah, that's,
So it sounds like the outlet's the problem. It's outlet.
the outlets are,
Not my outlet, past me. I mean,
yeah.
The brim of the river.
yeah, the outlets are usually always the problem.
Pond right
I mean,
I mean, that railroad's abandoned now. I mean, I don't know.
well, they claim it's still not.
so
It is in Howard County, but not in Clinton.
we've given you a couple options that I think can be worked out outside of this board and then brought back here. So, I guess with that, I'm gonna entertain a motion, to continue.
I'll make a motion that we table this till the drainage issue is resolved.
Or options brought back, maybe just to the
Yeah.
next, I think your board rules say you can continue to the next meeting.
Yeah.
Okay.
Then it comes back up, it's, I mean, the goal isn't to postpone indefinitely.
Second.
Okay, roll call, please.
Gordon Brewer,
Yes.
Grant Muller.
Yes.
Walt Minnick,
Yes.
Andy Bailey,
Yes.
James Sheet.
Yes.
So bring some options, and then, I would note, it sounds like there's a mutual problem on us, so maybe if anybody can help find a solution to that, and I'm sure, if there's questions about drainage, reaching out to Dan, he may be able to provide advice, not solutions, but maybe advice on options. So, if you're thinking that direction, maybe you'll have some.
I wouldn't know how we.
Well, there's a place, that's where it drops. There's a bridge there on it and the interurban. There's still an interurban there too, right beside it.
Okay.
Yeah, that's right here.
There's a hole there, that's where it all pools, that's the lowest place in the world, man, it goes
Is
nowhere.
there room to dig out down there to,
Well, that is the
It-
problem, it's on past that that's higher, is the problem, that's.
I'm gonna move on, so, cause we got a full agenda, so if you guys wanna work on it, you're more than welcome to go
Maybe
kind of.
exchange information or something so you can have continuing
Yeah.
conversation, see if there's a mutual solution that, you know, which one maybe works best cumulatively for the group.
Okay, our next item is, application CC 2023-00113, the petition of Charles Simmons. However,
Ned, sir, your hat.
Thank you.
Yep.
we'll need a motion to, waive the filing deadline of 18 days for this one.
Motion to waive the deadline.
Second.
All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
That's Andy, right?
All
Yes, I was
opposed?
the second.
So, all right. We could hear this application. It has been approved, so give it to you now, Liz.
Do you guys have on the last one, the copy of the plat that I gave to you?
Yep. Here, I'll send all of it back down.
Sorry, I just don't wanna lose stuff and then need it later. Okay, this is the petition of Charles Simmons, and it's another request for primary approval of a one-lot minor subdivision called Simmons Swamp Creek. Both the lot in question and all the surrounding land is owned agriculturally. The site consists of the site consists of a little bit under 5 acres on the south side of East 300 North, between 1100 East and 1250 East in section 27 of Johnson Township. This site is the second lot split off 160-acre parent tract, and it's surrounded by farm ground. There is floodplain around the proposed new lot, with the tip of it just inside the southeast corner. I would note, if this looks familiar to the board, the first lot split came through the subdivision process, maybe, I'm gonna guess about a year ago, if I was guessing. So for those of you on a little longer, you're not crazy, it does look familiar. So on the second page, you can see a map showing the floodplain, and how some of that floodway fringe does come up into this lot as proposed. And there's a picture that shows the eastern property line from 300 North. So the petitioner obtained Board of Zoning Appeals special exception approval for this site November 22nd of 2022. This site is not an illegal watershed, but there is floodplain in the vicinity, and along the southeast corner. It does not appear that floodplain will affect the petition site. There's 3 soil types that are listed there, for your interest. In terms of request analysis, the petitioner requests primary plat approval of a one-lot minor. The standard rural development protection language is included in the covenants. The surveyor's office has stated the drainage board did approve this plat for drainage. The health department has approved the property is suitable for a septic system. It will require perimeter drainage outlet. The enforcement clause in the covenants is included and can be initiated by anyone within a quarter mile. In terms of standards of design, the covenants were forwarded to Jay, and he did have some changes that he had flagged and before he went on vacation, and he sent to Ron. All but one of those changes has been made. The change that got missed, Ron, is in item 12, and it's a minor one. I think you could probably just
Conditional,
make
yep.
your motion conditional upon him getting that last change made to Jay's satisfaction. It's just Jay wanted a the, and you left it as a there, so it's a easy miss, and it was right in the seam of the papers. Everything else looks like it was made. In terms of subdivision name, there is no other subdivision according to the county recorder named Simmons Swamp Creek. So consequently, staff would recommend granting primary approval of the minor subdivision, subject to the covenants being revised to Jay's satisfaction. And the staff report didn't expressly mention it, but there is a perimeter drain outlet for this site identified. It is daylighting on site, and because of the floodplain in the back, there's ample fall for it to daylight back there along that edge. So the one thing I would note, looking at the plat though, Ron, which I didn't see until right this moment, you've got the floodplain line indicated, but you have the buildable area overlapping it. It's not a significant issue, but on the secondary, I'd like to see the buildable area end at the floodplain line, not continue in, because there's not a
unbuildable.
sewer system here to, to allow you to use elevation in the floodway fringe anyway, so. Otherwise, this meets the standards, and I recommend to approve with those notes.
Okay, thank you, Liz. Would the petitioner or representative of the petitioner like to speak?
I will make the changes on those two notes with on the covenants number 12 and changing that building setback outside.
Okay. Anyone else here for this petition? Nope. Okay. Board discussion?
No.
I don't have any.
Okay. Motion, thoughts?
Well, the previous hearing brought up something I was thinking about on this one. One's already sailed, it's done. But should this ever change hands, right now this is basically a family area, but requiring a easement across this other piece of land going back to the outlet following wherever the drain tile empties out, if it's on that other property back here.
The drain tile outlets on,
The drain tile goes to the south or to the southeast? So does it leave, does it outlet outside of the property boundary, or is it within the property boundary?
here's the plat, the back corner comes back here, here's the floodplain. The drain tile outlet's right here at 894 on the plat, and does not continue.
Okay, so it's right here.
Yeah,
If it's contained on the property, then it solves that.
yeah. Any other questions?
Not for me.
Okay. I have a motion.
I would move we approve the plat for Simmons
With the conditions? Well,
with the conditions as noted.
okay.
I don't think they were noted in the staff report, unfortunately.
What are the conditions?
To,
The building setback.
Covenants to-
covenants to Jay's,
All right, to Jay's satisfaction.
And the
Very good.
setback for the building envelope outside of the floodplain.
Okay. That works.
we have a motion.
Second.
Second. Roll call, please.
Takes a moment to write satisfaction.
Shorthand.
Oh, really?
5 or 6 months, you were in here.
Okay,
Remember this one?
Jordan Brewer,
Yes.
Grant Moeller,
Yes.
Walt Minnick,
Yes,
Andy Bailey,
They all,
Yes.
They all look
Dan
the same.
Sheets. Okay, primary, plat.
Maybe that's just because I'm brand new to it. I don't know.
Okay, next up is application 2023-00114. The petition of Brian and Karina Brandt, and it needs a motion to waive the filing deadline of 18 days as well.
Motion to waive the deadline?
Second.
All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay. Can take us to that one when you're ready, please, Liz.
Right, as you noted, this is the petition of Brian and Karina Brandt. They're also requesting a primary approval of a one-lot minor subdivision called Brandt Farms. Again, both this property and everything surrounding are agricultural. The site consists of about 1 3/4 acres on the south side of East 150 South between US Highway 421 and South 700 East in Section 14 of Michigan Township. This parcel was a first split off 173-acre parent tract. It's surrounded by farmland, and while staff was doing research on the property, when we did the point system, we discovered in the 1962 and 1972 GIS flyovers, actually those were just aerials, but anyway, the petition site formerly did have a dwelling on it, so this was previously a home site. This site was administratively approved for a house in the A1 district by the point system. It received 11 points, and those are detailed in case you have an interest in that. There's 6 soil types. I also won't read those to you, but you can read through them if you'd like. In terms of an analysis, this is a request for primary approval, a one-lot minor. The standard rural development protection language is included in the covenants. The surveyor's office has stated the drainage board approved the drainage and the request for this particular plat. The health department has approved the property as suitable for a septic system, They have required a perimeter drain outlet. The plat does show a recorded drainage easement with an instrument number, 2023-0505 for an outlet. That recorded easement was forwarded to Jay Moore, who reviewed that and was okay with it. The enforcement clause in the covenants is included, and it can be initiated by an adjacent landowner within a quarter mile. In terms of principles and standards of design, Jay did review the restrictive covenants. Ron did bring us a revision to match the items. There were two things in Jay's that got missed. I don't think either one is significant enough not to be solved in the secondary. Under item 1, Jay had noted off to the side and you made a change, but then the grammar doesn't work the way you changed it. It doesn't read it. I think to change the words as a over to perhaps for, because right now it reads used as one, and I think it needs to be used for one, but at any rate, Jay had made a note off to the side. And then in item 11, he had noted that the words number 1 needed to come off of there for lot, which you did remove, but you also removed the word lot, so it now just says of said, period. So, neither one is major. I think they can, be subject to, and we can verify them on the secondary. But otherwise, Jay didn't have any issue with the covenants. In terms of the subdivision name, having checked with the county recorder, there is no other subdivision named Brant Farm, so the standard would appear to be met. So consequently, staff would recommend granting primary approval, subject to the covenant revisions being completed to Jay's satisfaction.
Okay, thank you, Liz. With the petitioner, or,
Nope, I could easily fix those two things.
okay, is there anybody else here that would like to speak on it? Okay, board discussion, thoughts?
Nope.
I don't have
Personally
much.
been on the site, there's a legal drain adjacent to this site. I think it's a great location, reuse of the property that historically had a home on it. I would recommend we grant approval with the 2 changes to the grammar issues in the covenants.
We have a motion.
Second.
Second. Roll call, please.
Burton Brewer,
Yes.
Dan Sheets,
Yes.
Walt Minnick, Kevin Daly,
Yes.
and I swear I'm missing someone. I got a second page here, and I think it's in
Grant.
a different order.
Grant.
Grant, so I'm sorry, Grant.
You're good. Yes.
All right, perfect. So that's 5-0.
Okay, next up is application 2023-00115, the petition of Jay Rook, and it needs a waiver of the filing deadline of 18 days.
I move we waive the filing deadline of 18 days.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay. Waiver approves. I'll hand it over to Liz to take us through the application.
Yes, so as noted, this is the petition of Jay Rook. This is a request for a 2-lot minor subdivision, so departing ways a bit with the others tonight. And this is the Lila Rue edition. Again, this property and everything surrounding it are zoned agricultural. The petition site, in this case, the original parent tract is about 120, just a little under 120 acres. And there's gonna be a split in 2 areas to create, roughly a 1 3/4 acre lot, which there's an existing farmhouse on, and then another little under 1 1/4 acre lot where the petitioner would like to place a second non-farm dwelling. The site for the new home is located on the north side of West State Road 38. It's between 500 West and 600 West in section 14 of Madison Township. If staff's understanding that at least the initial intent for the new dwelling is for the petitioner's daughter and her family to reside in. On the second page, you can kind of see a picture showing what's happening here. The new lot is actually behind the existing farmhouse, and there's going to be a shared drive to access both. It was staff's recommendation to go ahead and create a 2-lot minor, both because of the shared driveway access, but also so that the farmhouse also could go separate directions from the farmland in the future without having a strange configuration with the lot behind. So there will be 2 lots created, and then there's a picture that shows what you're looking at from 38. You can see the existing house there, and then the new home site. You can kind of see a bit of that field back behind with a tree in it, and there's a woodland then behind that. So the new lot, which is the one behind, was administratively approved for a single house in the agricultural district. It scored 12 points on the point system, and those are detailed there, if you're curious to read through them. There's 2 soil types, on that new home site, and those are also detailed. In terms of a request analysis, the request is for primary plat approval for 2-lot minor subdivision. The standard rural development protection language is included in the covenants. The surveyor's office has stated that the drainage board did approve this particular plat in terms of drainage. The health department has approved the property as suitable for a septic system. It will require perimeter drainage outlet, which is shown on site on the proposed plat, and I can pass that down in a few. The board, might consider, this is something staff, discussed, asking the petitioner to add an easement before secondary on either one side or the other of the rear lot to allow an outlet for the front lot septic, should it ever fail and not be in common ownership with the family. We've seen this on a couple other lots lately where there's an existing home, and, right now that's on a septic that's very likely grandfathered in, so to speak, and just hasn't failed. But if it fails, it'll have to have a perimeter drain, and if it has to have a perimeter drain, it'll have to have an outlet. Or you could risk having to tear down the original house. So, it's usually an easy thing to add. We didn't try to specify which side it should be on, but staff thought it might be worth discussing with the applicant. If they're willing to do that, this isn't technically an issue of them meeting the standards, because the new home site does have an outlet, so it could be a condition they just have to meet by secondary to Jay's satisfaction. The enforcement clause in the covenants is included and can be initiated by a landowner within a quarter mile. And then Craig Carpenter, who's a permit investigator for Clinton County with NDOT, called staff on February 27th, and he gave verbal approval for the existing driveway to serve as access for the additional dwelling as well. So there's no issue there. In terms of principles and standards of design, the restrictive covenants, Jay went through before, Jay Moore went through before he went on vacation, and he did note some changes. Ron has not submitted anything revised, so we've not had an opportunity to review it. I say I have 2 of them.
Okay, the reason why this one's ours.
Okay, all right.
But they're both the same.
Do you have a copy of his changes?
He called me and told me just check it off and say it was okay.
Okay, well, I have a copy of changes for you. I would note, I'm just kind of looking through this, it does not appear to me that, anything in this is something that would fail to meet the standards of the subdivision ordinance. I think it can be, like we do with other
Conditional.
plats, fixed before secondary. With the additional note that if the board is gonna require an easement across the back lot for the first lot's future use, if the septic fails, you probably should specifically note that easement needs to be included to Jay's satisfaction, because that will be a little bit more than his previous edits. It doesn't look like there's anything in here that would require us to need to continue this for Jay to recommunicate. It looks like pretty standard edit type stuff. So, with that note, staff would recommend granting primary approval with the condition that if the board and the petitioner discuss that and so choose, requiring that easement for an outlet for the front lot, and then requiring the covenants to be revised to Jay's satisfaction, which looks like it's mostly a couple changes related to the driveway easement and maintenance, and making sure that it's clear that somebody is maintaining that drive and how that's being divided between the lots, and it doesn't become a feud between those landowners down the road, especially if they're not both owned by family 100 years from now.
Okay, thank you, Liz. Would the petitioner or Ron like to add anything else?
It was okay.
Have you ever known Jay to say that it's okay?
I can pretty
I
much
don't think
guarantee,
so.
personally, when I said something to Jay, there's always something.
But I did change the plat to read that as a 24-foot driveway because of what we discussed. So. But other than that, yeah, I could agree with that.
Okay. Anyone else like to speak on it?
No objections to the easement for the house in the front?
And there's the outlet on site for the perimeter drain, for the back one.
And that plat should show on our, if that's the new.
So
Yeah, I
there's the
actually didn't check them,
driveway
they were there's the one in the back.
going to the back, and then there's the drain. What's the drain for the existing? There isn't anything.
Yeah.
So they are gonna have to have an easement. Yeah,
If this one would fail.
fail,
so they
yeah.
could-
There's, yeah, I think that's imperative that.
Yeah, that's the new one, it's just the 24-foot flag one.
Yeah.
I get, what we're asking is, brought up, bringing an easement if the old one ever fails, so that you would have the ability to hook into the perimeter that's already there on the second house, if that makes sense.
Yes, we own all the farmland all the way around the lots, except for the highway part, so that's no problem.
Well, they might be able just to go right over here.
Well, and they could
There's
add an
enough-
easement next to
Depending
the
on the
plat as well.
Yeah,
Yeah,
there could be an easement coming off because of the way that falls going that direction.
What if
You know.
what if we leave it to their choice where they wanna put the easement,
Think
but we
that's
just
a
put
good idea.
conditional that an easement to Jay's satisfaction must be included somewhere for the front lot? We know you own it all now, but when we look at subdivisions, like we look at what might happen, 100 years down the road, 200 years, and you wouldn't believe the number of feuds we see, or houses that a septic fails and suddenly people aren't getting along, so it just makes sure that that farmhouse in the front will always be able to be occupied, even if something unpredictable happens down the road,
No, that makes sense.
so.
so it just needs an easement, wherever you wanna put it is fine.
If you wanna take it across the farm ground or some
Yeah.
other way, as long as Ron gets it in the plat and Jay's okay with it.
Any other questions or thoughts from the board?
No.
I would move a grant approval to La La Rue subdivision, with the condition that the
Let him
easement is maintained and, or the easement is created and the corrections that need to be made to the covenants.
Hang on, Dan, I only heard part of your conditions, subject to.
The easement being created for a perimeter drain on lot 1 and the corrections to the covenants and the deed, whatever they are for the driveway.
Now I'll second.
There you go. Perfect. All right, roll call, please.
Dana and Brett. Jordan Brewer,
Yes.
Dan Sheets,
Yes.
Walt Minnick,
Yes.
Andy Phelan,
Yes.
Grant Muller.
Yes.
Okay. Do we have any new business?
We do. Have a couple things.
Okay.
The first one's gonna look really familiar to Andy, because the BZA just did this.
Go if you want.
So, we actually realized this at our town advisory board, when we had, one of our towns at last minute was unable to get a board member there in person, but wanted to participate in selecting their representative. And, now that we're kind of past COVID, state law says that in order to utilize participation by electronic means of any kind, a board has to have a resolution. You can't make that resolution when you need it. So Jay basically drafted something for each of our boards, just to give us options in the future, should we have a case where we do need it. It does not allow a digital meeting, it doesn't allow people to just vanish, but it would allow, some options for participation, to be able to provide board members ways of participating if something unexpected were to come up. Once you already get to the meeting point and people are there and there's an interruption, so, I'm gonna pass down copies, Jay's not here, but we don't normally do resolutions, so this was kind of a different thing. But Jay felt that this was something, because of the way state law is, where a resolution made more sense than amending board rules, and that's what state law seems to guide toward. This is only an internal policy for your board, it doesn't really change anything for the public. And Jay, had noted, and if you have questions for Jay, we might have to just wait and address that, he talked some at the BZA, but Jay had noted this pretty much pulls straight out of state law. So methods that are used in order for a member to vote must be both visual and auditory. And I know the BZA has asked that I talk to the, IT about seeing if there's a way to get access to the computer system, so if someone's participating, we can maybe put them up on the big screen back behind, so the audience can kind of see them behind the board. So I'm supposed to look into that, but all else fails, we can use Zoom on a tablet, and lean it in such a way that the person there can see the room, the board members in the audience can see the person. There are some rules in state law about how often it can be used and those kinds of things. Realistically, as staff, our opinion generally is if board members are not attending in person and face-to-face with the audience, then we're gonna start talking with their appointing bodies about replacing them. Because this is not designed to be a way of conducting meetings, this is designed to be a way of not sending the public away when an unexpected interruption occurs. Or say you have board members and there's, like tonight, there's only 4 here. Well, let's say you voted 2-2 and you needed somebody to resolve that tie. There are 5, I'm sorry, Walt. So change that. Let's say there's only 4 board members here and you vote 2-2 and you're hung. Well, if a 5th board member, maybe he's sick or maybe he's out of town, but if he can participate that way, he could provide a swing vote so you don't have to hang
No,
that.
we have to have 4. We
Yeah.
went through this.
Yeah,
We have to have 4 of the 7 regardless of who's here.
You're right. So 2 people would have to participate digitally
Yeah.
for that to work.
Yep.
But the principle remains that it gives some options for ways to handle things other than just sending people away and having them come back in certain circumstances. Jay felt like it would be wise to have proactively, so if it was needed, it could be used. You don't have to use it at any point in time, but if you want to use it and you haven't adopted it, you can.
So can we read through this and vote on it at our next meeting?
You absolutely can, and
Okay.
Jay will be at your next
That would
meeting
be-
too, so if there's additional questions. There's no urgency to this. When we did it for the town council, town advisory council on the fly, then Jay was like, well, maybe we should just have the APC and BZA have this proactively, so it's a tool in the toolbox. If you have a meeting where you think
did.
you're gonna have everybody there, and then by some surprise, someone's not, you have the option to have board members who can participate remotely help fill in, so you can conduct business. My opinion as staff would still be, if we know 3 days ahead we don't have a quorum, we're gonna cancel that meeting and reschedule it, because the audience really deserves to look face to face on people that are making decisions about land that they own, that affects them personally in a unique way. So the intent of this is not to be like, let's just have digital meetings, and actually, it's very limited in what you can do digitally anyway, as Andy pointed out to the BZA. You can't really just replace your meetings with not being there, but it does allow you to allow other members to participate who maybe can't be there, but aren't actually unable to use the digital means for a few minutes.
One thing that hit me when we looked at it was you have to have or you have to essentially have a quorum, or a majority has to show up. You can't, it's like, we can't have this meeting tonight and have
3 people.
3 people,
But if you have 4 present and you
And
have
you
one
have
other who
one
can
other.
participate but is somewhere else, this would then allow them to call in, hear the meeting, participate, and vote. And if there's some kind of hung vote, it allows, participation there. And yes, you might need 2 members to call in at that point, but it does allow ways for members to participate who, because they're ill or because they're traveling.
I'm fine with that. I guess, is Jay saying that's the state law, or is that his twist on the state law?
No, what's written in here, he said, because the BZA asked this, and he said what's written in here is taken directly out of the statute for under what circumstances this can and cannot occur. But the state law also says that the boards have to a board actually has to adopt it to make use of it. Otherwise, if a situation comes up where you want to use it, you cannot use it.
It's gotta be
So-
in place before the meeting that you
Yeah.
wanna
You
use
need
it.
it at. So it becomes the only reason we were able to do it on the fly with the town advisory was 3 of the 4 towns were present. So the 3 towns present acted to adopt the resolution before we were able to call the 4th town and allow their board member to participate over a video feed. If for some reason we had a situation where only 2 towns were present, we wouldn't have been able
Yeah,
to do anything
yeah.
about it, So this is preemptive, there's no urgency to it. You can certainly take it, read it, discuss it at the next meeting, not an issue.
That would be my,
Yeah. I think the other
Suggestion.
members should look at it.
yeah.
Okay. Second item of new
Sorry, Greg,
business.
we
Can you send this out electronically?
Sorry, Greg, we didn't give you that on BZA.
Okay.
Email that.
I'm trying to remember where I was. Oh, I was at sales training. Learn to become a good salesman, Andy.
second item of new business, also should be somewhat routine. I'd mentioned at the last meeting that this was coming. So, the county commissioners had hired, an HR firm to help review, job descriptions across, all entities that are paid by the county, whether or not they're under the supervision of the commissioners. They had recommended some revisions, which, as staff, we've reviewed. They're no-brainers, they make sense. We had current job descriptions anyway, so there were virtually no changes to ours, except for some formatting and some bolding text, and then I think there's a couple just extra, I would call them, legal clauses, you know, kind of added to the end, just to more fully flush out, you know, some of the duties and responsibilities, but it didn't change anything substantive. So final drafts of those were provided. So state law says that the Area Plan Commission hires, fires, and decides on the job duties for Area Plan Commission staff. So the commissioners cannot adopt these. They've requested that we examine them and adopt them. I don't see any issues in them. They're virtually identical to what we have now. I can pass them down in their final format. There's 4 of them, 1 for each staff member. If the Plan Commission chooses to adopt the new job descriptions, then we would provide copies of those to the auditor's office, as a courtesy, and so that they're in the records, for payroll. Those are not 4 identical copies, those are 1 copy of each of the 4 job descriptions. And in terms of the actual duties, they are unchanged from what we have now. The only thing that's different is the bold text at the top is formatted a little bit differently in terms of the same information's there, it's just, it has a little bit different spacing on it. And then, there's some clauses about like lifting of weight and some of those things that are more flushed out in the back than what the original description was. Like I said, I think my understanding from the commissioners, I think Jordan had told me this, was some offices in the county didn't even have job descriptions, or their job descriptions were like decades old and not relevant to the current people working in them. So there's an effort to just standardize and professionalize across the entire government. The commissioners have led, and I think, rightly so, you know, that's to be commended. So I would certainly advise cooperating in the effort to professionalize, and, you know, I don't know if Jordan, you have anything you wanna add, because you sat on this from the commissioner end, in terms of why you believe it's important to update these, but I don't wanna take your thunder, but.
So just from a holistic perspective, our handbook's outdated, many job descriptions are outdated, jobs have changed, that there's still job descriptions around, that job's not even functional anymore, there's been new jobs created, so it's, some of it's legal based to get us more compliant, but others are to just get everybody more consistent across the board around the county. So it's kind of a 3-prong approach, so the job descriptions, handbook, and then they're doing a salary survey as well, so that they all work together.
I think it's much needed. The surveyor's office updated ours. We had quite a few of those things you mentioned, jobs that were no longer there, technology that we no longer use. Need to update this.
The only reason ours were more current is because the Area Plan Commission as an entity, each time we've rehired, has by habit reviewed our job descriptions. So since it just so happens that I relatively recently became director, there was a review that happened then. When Kat was hired, there was a review of that description before we advertised it. Our secretarial position has changed twice, our building inspector's been rehired. So in the last 5 years, all 4 positions got reviewed as we did the rehire process, so it just flowed. There will be one change I wanna make on, actually, I don't know that I need to make it on there. No, it's not specified. Okay, I'll come to that in other business, but I guess if you want to adopt these, you will need to make a motion, a second, and a vote, because it is a state law required duty. If you don't do it, I can't update them or provide them back.
Can we batch them, or do we need to do each individual one? I'm assuming we can
I
batch them.
think you can just adopt, revised job descriptions for all staff as proposed. I think that would work.
Okay.
Or as provided by the, you know, HR, however you wanna tie that in, but we have, you know, we have the copies provided.
As presented.
As presented, that's probably a good way to do it.
What do you guys think?
I'm good with it.
Okay,
Councilor.
Good.
Yeah, I've been involved with the the updates of the plan before. Area plan's kind of ahead of this compared to some of our other offices.
A lot ahead.
Yep. So, I think it's a great idea.
I move to approve the job descriptions as presented.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Jordan Brewer,
Yes.
Dan Sheets,
Yes.
Walt Minnick,
Yes.
Andy Bailey,
Yes.
Brett Mullen.
Yes.
Okay, so 5-0, I will provide, copies of that, along with, once we get them, a copy of the minutes showing the approval over to the auditor's office and let the commissioners, well, Jordan, however we wanna do that, but we'll make sure the commissioners are aware it's done. I have, one more item under new, oh, I have two more, what am I forgetting? I got them. Oh, I do have two. I saw that one on here, alright, that's right. So the next item, under new business, which, this one, I guess, is kind of regrettable, Jordan's aware of this as your president, but, Ty is going to be retiring this year. It was, unforeseen, it was not in his plan, but, his wife is retiring, and when they went to talk about kind of what their situation was, they unexpectedly realized that, there would be no negative effect to him retiring as well, and, they want to be able to spend their retirement years together, so we completely understand and support that choice. He's asking for a date in June, but he has agreed to be flexible with me based upon making sure we have a transition and we don't end up, especially being during the construction season, dropping balls on projects that are in process. So what I would like to do is do something very similar to what we did when Mark Timmons retired, where we hire a second building inspector that's at a lower salary until he gets certified, and he works alongside and gets trained under the current inspector. I'd like to look at, Jordan and I talked about this, and this does, I should make sure you're aware, you can vote to authorize me to start this process and to go under a certain framework, but before it's a done deal, I do have to take it to county council and make sure that they will fund it. I don't anticipate an issue, they didn't have an issue with it last time. But I wanna be clear, there is another step I have to take, but I can't take it to county council without the support of the area plan commission, because again, you hire, fire, and decide on responsibilities. So I would like, when we moved Kat and I to 40-hour employees to help handle some of the additional workload, without generating so much unpaid time back to the county, Ty chose not to make that switch. Jordan had recommended, and I also think it's a great idea, because we're now rehiring, we don't have somebody in the position, we'd like to move that to a 40-hour position and just hire it in that way, which will then allow us, among other things, currently, like scheduling inspections, we don't schedule past 3 or before 9, because we then end up running our inspector into, time he's not being paid for. So that'll allow us to schedule, a full day. It will allow covering time on nights and weekends or having him come to meetings. Same thing as it does for Kat and I. Does not change our office hours at all. We stay with the county on those. But it's allowing for fair compensation, but also expectations from a supervisory standpoint for time committed to serve the public. And we are just across the board in the office. We have more to do than we have staff time. So it'll give us another 5 hours a week that I can utilize as a director within my staff.
Probably because I'm new and so young, but who is Ty?
He's our building inspector.
Okay.
And it's a great question.
I apologize. I don't know.
No, it's a great question. And it is a loss. He has been awesome. He
Okay.
really has. And I think, he has mixed feelings about it. It's the right thing for him, and I definitely support him in that. I appreciate that he's willing to give us a lot of advance notice. He has not yet provided a written notice, and I've asked him not to do that until we know a for sure end date, because once he provides that, we lock him into a retirement date, and he gets that all filed with the auditor's office. We can't undo it. So we need to be sure we have a suitable rehire and that they're working, because the thing that the board may not be aware of, some of you probably are, Dan's seen this, of all of my staff, a malfunctioning building inspector has the highest and quickest negative effect on the impression of the county as a whole and the impression of our office. We have had inspectors for the county in the past, before they were supervised by area plan, who were combative, who were not enforcing codes, who were random. There's been a lot of work done to professionalize our inspectors. and to make sure that, Mark Timmons was the first inspector that actually got certified and professionalized. That was his choice, but it was a good choice. And then we made it a requirement for Ty, it will be a requirement for the next inspector. So I guess the point of that is, if we go through the hire process and we hire, and the person we hire turns out to have a chip on their shoulder or not to be able to work with the public in a clear and communicative manner, then my opinion as a director is I need to terminate that and rehire again to get the right match. Not pull somebody in that then for the next 6 years, the commissioners and me and everybody else is gonna be getting phone calls about. So the intent would be that we would hire that person, we'd get them trained enough that we know it's working, and then we'd pick that date and segue out, and it will still be across the summer if all goes as planned. But we don't wanna, and we could bring in a consultant if we needed to temporarily if something went completely sideways, but I guess what I need from the plan commission is your blessing to pursue starting the hire process for the new building inspector as a second inspector temporarily, and it'll be the same thing where it's a probationary position, where if they don't work out or they don't get certified, then they don't move into the full-time inspector's position with the full pay. They get terminated and we rework that, but I do need authorization to make the hire with the intent that then that person would take the place of the full-time inspector when Ty retires, and we've moved forward as we have been, with hopefully a great fit.
Thoughts?
I think it needs to be done sooner the better.
It's my opinion.
The last time we went through this, it worked out well. I think it'll work out well again, I hope.
And we do need to start advertising fairly quickly to get a good solid 3 months of training time and certification, time to study and certify in there.
Do you wanna do a motion?
I would move it.
And before you do that, are you including the 40 hours? Cause I think that's,
Oh, yes, I think we need that. I've seen
Okay.
that from the inspection side, running short. Need to have that additional hour, not hours, but hours.
Okay.
So that's a motion, with the additional hours and to start advertising immediately.
I'll second.
roll call please.
Jordan Brewer,
Yes.
Dan Sheets,
Yes.
Walt Minnick,
Yes.
Andy Bailey,
Yes.
Grant Muller.
Yes.
Okay, so I will take that to the next council meeting, because I've gotta make sure that we'll have to get a special appropriation for that, because we don't carry that in our budget normally. And if there's some issue, then I'll bring it back to the next plan commission meeting, but otherwise, I'll just send out an email updating you guys on where that ended up. I'll also have to take the 40-hour increase to council, because again, they're gonna have to appropriate some additional for probably the end of this year's budget, and then next year won't be such a big deal, we can include that. But if for some reason they have a concern, I don't expect that, because they told me when we went to 40 hours for Kat and I, that if future staff members wanted to do that they supported helping solve the work and staffing disparity by increasing hours and then increasing the hourly pay to match that, over hiring, as a first step. So, the final thing that I have, and this was something Kat had looked ahead and noted, this happens to us most years. July 4th happens to fall on our meeting date. So I know that we're quite a few months out from July, but sometimes we don't have business. So the question comes, do we want to meet July 4th anyway? That would not seem advisable.
No.
Do we want
I
to
won't be
just,
there.
do we want to go to a date adjacent? Or conversely, you could simply decide to cancel it, and if we have people filing that are urgent to hear, then we could contact everybody for a special meeting the week before, the week after, wherever it fits. But otherwise, just plan on pushing business where we can forward to August, unless something, we let Ron know, since he's typically, I don't know where he went.
I wouldn't want a meeting on July 4th.
I wouldn't either as staff, but I'm kind of a slave to what you decide,
I would say cancel it and then we'll do special meeting
if one's.
yeah, we'll just
Yeah,
play it by ear.
cause we'll have what, June 6th will be our regular June meeting.
I think
And
you'll
you guys will have a depth on what's coming down the pike for
We
that.
should have an idea if there's something big.
Yep.
And we'll make sure Ron generates most of the stuff that comes in last minute that we don't necessarily always know about. So as long as he knows he needs to plan for June or August, then hopefully, unless we have an unexpected business or something, we can cruise through. But if not, we can call a special meeting and make it work.
Yeah, like July 11th or something like
Mm-hmm.
that. Yep. I say that's, so do we need to move to cancel that tonight?
You probably should, just so it's on the record.
I move to cancel our scheduled July meeting.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Jordan Brewer,
Yes.
Dan Sheets,
Yes.
Walt Minnick,
Yes.
Andy Bailey,
Yes.
Grant Muller.
Yes.
5-0, perfect, thank you. Other than, when's our next meeting date? April 4th. So other than that, and then,
Hold on.
when Ty sets a retirement date, we'll let everybody know, we'll throw some kind of celebration for him. He has been an exceptional employee across the board. I can't say enough good things about Ty.
Been great working with him from our side.
Yeah, he has been above and beyond even what I would necessarily expect, from a general run-of-the-mill building inspector. So, I would note that we're gonna miss him, and things have kind of settled into a routine in the office where we all kind of know each other. So, yeah, everyone was like, "Wait, no, you can't do that." So,
Okay, our next meeting's April 4th, as Kat stole my thunder on the agenda, but, no. Entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All right. Still recording, so I'm hesitant to speak too